Good afternoon and welcome to Smart Connection Consultancy's webinar number 1, how to replace an aging field. My name is Martin Shepherd, I'm the Managing Director of Smart Connection Consultancy and I've been working in the synthetic field for about 10 years or so. We've done about 75% of most of the third generation fields and 6 or 7 of the replacements have been done around Australia. So what we want to do is just share a couple of our insights and try and help people in the industry. So to begin with, I'm going to do a couple of introductions, then we're going to look at what you need to do consider before changing the field, what's the scope, the process, talk about recycling and green engineering, and then a very simple 10-stop plan. So Smart Connection have a philosophy of sharing as much knowledge and information with the local governments and sports as we can. So we're doing this through a number of smart guides, 4 webinars, we've got a LinkedIn discussion group, and we obviously offer consultancy to try and help people in the sector. So to consider what you need to know before you change. So really you have to have a good understanding of your current surface, whether it's because seams are opening up like this, or whether areas are kicked out like on the corner flags, or indeed goal areas where the penalty spots have been kicked through, directly through onto the civil engineering pavement base. All of those were and are manageable by themselves. But when you get a few of them across the field, it's identifying that you've got some serious problems. And so those problems are number either safety or performance. So most of these can actually be fixed if they're caught earlier on and early enough. So our suggestion is to have an annual review, which will also give you an indication of how many years the field has still to go. We call that a health check. And what we found is when people bring us in between years 6 and 8, we can actually enhance the livability, if you like, the life expectancy by about another 3 to 5 years, year 6. Often clients bring us in when it's too late. So this is a field where the turf is already folded over, you've got the glare on the light, and it's exceptionally well used. So that's all brilliant for the local council. But there are challenges when you then have left it so late in terms of some of the things you'll see going wrong, like around circles, the centre circle. You've got the seams which have parted and are now so far apart you can't just sew them back or glue them back together. So you need to put in pieces of grass which stand proud. So when you get lots of examples like this in one field, it tells you that it's time that you've got to replace it. So there's some indicators, or get somebody in like us and we'll give you a health check and give you a more consistent lowdown on where you are. So the financial implications then need to be considered. Who's responsible? Have you got a sinking fund? If you can't afford it all in 1 year, can you afford it over 2 years? Does it come out of your CapEx strategy or indeed your operational budget? So we should have that information years before you want to change. But in case you don't, this is an indication of how much it's going to cost you. So we've allowed about 15K for setup costs, writing your spec, coming out to tender. The synthetic field only costs just under $400,000 for a typical recreation field, soccer field of about 8,500 square meters. But we've allowed site establishments, project management by the contractor of 100K, 75K for disposal, and about another 90,000 in terms of rectifications in case you need it. We've also looked at secondary items such as player benches, equipment, goals for them to be replaced. Do you also need to consider lighting or any repairs to fencing? Put all of those in. We've added another 10% contingency over and on top of that, and it brings it to about $760,000 or $80 to $90 per square meter. This is also assuming it's the first 10 years and you're not having to replace the shock pad. If you're replacing the shock pad, add another $300,000 on top of it. Or if you haven't got a shock pad and it's your first one, add about $300,000 on the top. One of the critical aspects is when do you actually do it? When do you change your over? So that's the timeliness side. So what are you considering in terms of when you want to do it for seasonality of sport? Is it going to be the end of September or end of October when the winter season finishes and all the games have been done? If so, that means you'll miss the summer. Or do you do it at the end of summer and then miss some of the first few weeks of the winter season? So it's just about how you build both of those in. As the installation will only take 4 to 6 weeks, you should be able to plan it so that all of the tendering and the procurement and the initial prep work is done up to 8 to 12 weeks before you actually want it done. So for instance, if you want it done ready for cricket to play, say the 1st of October, and you know the summer will finish on the 1st of September, that should be long enough to actually install a standard field, subject to there not being many remediation works. So what you've got to do is then work backwards from there, allow 12 weeks for the carpet to be made, allow another 4 weeks of negotiations and finalization of design, so that's 16 weeks, and then allow your decision-making process and your procurement to go on there. So work backwards from when you want it is our recommendations. In terms of the scope of the replacements, are you replacing the carpet, the infill, the shock pad, the drainage cell, lighting, fencing, and its auxiliary equipment? The answer will be yes to any one of those. But the one thing we know you'll definitely be replacing is the carpet and the infill. So the infill is made of sand and rubber. In theory, there's no reason why you can't separate the two of those and use the sand in building projects or for cement or things like that. The rubber is a little bit more difficult, but if it's good quality, you may be able to use some of it again in the new field. So just have a talk with the tenderers before you put it out to make sure that there is some solutions for you. The carpet from 10 years ago probably can't be recycled, or not all of it. But what we've also got to do is make sure that the carpet that goes down is recyclable in 10 years' time. Check on the drainage cells, see if any are broken. Do that once you've got the carpet lifted, and then the other areas that we've talked about in terms of checking. You've also got to consider what's it going to be used for. Is it multi-sport? Is it a single sport? 10 years ago, nobody really had multi-sports field. It was a single sport field. Now we're using standards to do five-a-side, rugby union, rugby league, soccer, all on the AFL, all on the same field. So design it in a manner ready for the future, and therefore you get a performance system to encourage the greatest amount of usage. Do you need a shock pad? My suggestion is you always need a shock pad, both for safety and for the performance system. But you do need to make sure that the system is durable. Not all systems can cope with 60 to 80 hours of intensity and usage. FIFA standards are normally made for durability of about 40 to 50 hours a week with about 25 people on it. So if you've got 80 to 100 people on it for training or wherever, and you're using 60 hours a week, a standard FIFA system won't be able to cope. So you need extra durability. You need systems that can cope with that amount of usage. So some warranties that come with shock pads are only for 40 hours usage. So you wouldn't touch them because it wouldn't meet what your fit for purpose is. So make sure you look at that and get the right system. The civil engineering side, i.e. everything that goes underneath it, we need to make sure that you're aware if there's any deformities in the pavement. So are there any drops like in this picture? So this is actually a drain which actually had collapsed over the 10 years. And it has to all be dug out. There's a lot of soft spots. So the PC sum there is quite substantial. Also look at paths, fences, how can they be improved? Also, do you need to consider microplastics? So that's the little rubber getting into the waterways or into the land that surrounds it. And the design nowadays can contain that on the field up to about 95%. So have a chat with your consultants how to do that. And if they're not sure, come and have a chat with us. Do we want to improve the functionality of the site? Netting, storage, infill bags when they're brought in so it doesn't break and go everywhere. What about water bubblers? The goals, the coaches boxes, sports standards will have moved on from 10 years ago. Can we have cameras, underground services? What's the electric line? All of these type of questions should be answered before you confirm the scope of the replacement that you actually want. And these are some examples up in Queensland where the mini goals going across, which are actually hockey goals, are actually built in and then are pulled out. So it gives more surety as you see it. The emergency buttons are placed along the side of the netting. So if anything happens, people press that and it's linked into the center so people can see and get out there as quickly as they can. Water bubblers are now being placed on about 90% of the fields that we're involved in because it gives people the opportunity to drink when it gets warm. So that's the type of aspects we need. This is a grate that comes off the end of the gate that goes, the pedestrian and the vehicle gates, and it just collects any of the rubber so it doesn't go outside the field of play. It also stops mud coming in so you don't get weed buildup, etc., like that. And the technology around the lighting is really quite sophisticated now compared to how it used to be. So the LED lights that weren't around 10 years ago can make a huge difference. Also consider signage. Do it in a manner that isn't all about don't do this and don't do that. Let's be positive and proactive in terms of how you communicate and encourage people to be active, but take respect and care for the field. In terms of recycling and sustainability, there's increased pressure to recycle synthetic turf as opposed to repurposing it or incinerating it or throwing it in landfill. Some companies will offer repurposing. That's just a very polite way of saying it's going to be reused by somebody else. Now, most local governments are taking the view that they have to take responsibility so it doesn't then get thrown into landfill afterwards. Because if it goes to schools or little clubs or gardens, it won't be recycled afterwards because they can't afford to. So local governments are taking the responsibility for recycling it at this point. So there are a number of recycling strategies and green engineering to have an impact. So make sure that for next time we choose the choice of material that can be recycled 100%. Not take the backing off or the secondary backing off, but 100% of it can be redone. Make sure that the shock pad is totally recycled so that there is a strategy at the end of life of the field and we're not in quite as much of a problem as we are nowadays. So this is an example of some machinery that cuts the carpet, picks her up, rolls her up, and then can separate the sand and the infill on it. So the focus on extending the life cycle and reuse. We should have shock pads the last 25, 30 years. Look at infill that can be used at least twice. So sometimes the recycled infill that's put in can't be used that much. We've got to get rid of old carpet backing and use 100% recycling. Use latex over polyurethane. And yarn not available here yet for recycling, but it will be soon. In terms of defining the procurement approach for this, we've got to define an approach to civil because you don't know what's going to happen until you pick everything up, i.e. drainage movements on the ground. The surface may have taken up and had repairs, but you need to have a PC still in case there's been movement underneath. Do explore new designs, multi-sport approach. Ensure that there's a site survey completed before the order is placed. One company in their enthusiasm to put the order in before the survey and then found out that the site wasn't as large as they expected and that had a huge impact on the lines. Don't let that happen. What kind of contract do you want to be able to do this procurement? Our suggestion is a design finalization or indeed an install and remediation. The scope of it should be about removing what's there, dispose of it, remediate any problems, install, certify, maintain, and then recertify in 2 to 3 years' time, depending on the sport. You need to evaluate to make sure that you have the experience of doing that. They have the right machinery. They understand how to do civil remediation, and then they have the capacity and capability to do it. This isn't for a sales job. This is for somebody who's going to look after you for the next 6 months while they're doing the work and get a great outcome that's going to last you another 10 years. So to do that, we recommend a 10-step plan. The first 5 steps are: understand 2 to 3 years out what you can do to manage and extend the life expectancy to ensure your timelines. Plan for which timelines you want to consider. Which financial year can you afford it? Can it be over 2 years? What season are you going to do it at the end of? It's going to impact on somebody, so which one is the best to impact on? What's the procurement approach? How do you want it installed? And who's going to project manage it for you to make sure you get a good outcome? Number 3 is prepare, plan and fund all of the scenarios regarding remediation, civil works, base and drainage, just in case there is something wrong. It's always best to go back and say we haven't had to spend as much as we thought, than to go back and ask for another 20–25%, which could be another couple of $100,000. And please revisit the design options to meet the needs for the next decade. The traditional team sport against recreational needs, and also training needs to keep people off the surface. Agree the standards you need for the next 10 years plus in terms of the sport, AV, civil, durability, etc. It will make a big difference. Number 6 to 10, explore how you're going to manage it. What have been the management issues in the past 10 years? Ask the people on the site, because they'll know. Your maintenance contractor, your specialist contractor, the people who deal with the sports clubs, they know what the issues are. Take the chance to put that right as part of this. Consider green engineering approach for the replacement and the reuse of the current turf. Reuse, recycle, recyclable for your new stuff coming in. Develop a project management process as number 8. Allows for all scenarios to be considered with critical hold points aligned with contingency or PC sums. Align with a contractor who's completed this previously and has been successful. And the most important thing, don't leave it to last minute, so don't rush. Even if you have to, don't. A day of planning is worth so much to get all of this right. So, any questions that you have, please email us at this email below, and then we'll come back to you as quickly as we can. So, that's the end of our first session. We look forward to hearing more from you. My name is Martin Shepherd, and I look forward to catching up with you at the second webinar.